We but mirror the world. All the tendencies present in the outer world are to be found in the world of our body. If we could change ourselves, the tendencies in the world would also change. As a man changes his own nature, so does the attitude of the world change towards him. This is the divine mystery supreme. A wonderful thing it is, and the source of our happiness. We need not wait to see what others do. I'm Nicole Forrester, and I share hope.
Welcome to I Share Hope, the podcast where world leaders share their real stories of hope and how you can use actionable hope to start changing your life today. And now, here's your host, Chris Williams.
Okay, can you see me? Is it too dark?
It's just a little dark, I think, because the bright light's behind you. Can you tilt the shades a little bit? There's an elevator going down behind you.
Yeah. Can you see the ocean?
No, I can't. Is it between the buildings?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. What a view. Is this your house or your office?
This is my office.
Unbelievable.
This is where I can work 80 hours a week.
Yeah, no kidding. That's really amazing. So where are you at right now?
In Honolulu.
Honolulu?
Yeah. So the Australian expatriate gets to live in Hawaii.
I was expecting Australia. I thought, are you in downtown Sydney? Where is that? No kidding.
Yeah. Sorry, I should probably update that Skype thing.
Honolulu, that's not, I kind of want to end the conversation right here because you're not bringing any hope to me.
No. I'm here to share the hope.
Yeah.
I'm so curious. I want to ask you questions.
I'm sure we'll get there. You can ask all you want. I think the one thing I want is a ticket. I want to have this interview in person. I think having it there in Honolulu would probably be much more effective.
I think so too.
So what in the world, well, I got a million questions too.
Yeah.
So we can do all of this in the interview. What questions do you have for me? Because I want to make sure you are just happy and well informed.
Oh, well, I'm very happy, and I'm really honored that, you asked me to participate, and I'm so glad that our schedules finally aligned.
Me too.
How did you get started with this project? And it's just blossomed. It's massive.
Well, I don't know if it's massive, but it's helping me and a few other people. I think my wife listens to it. That's two of us. And I think there's a few more than that out there somewhere. So what we're doing is really trying to build hope in our lives. So myself and the people who are listening along and sharing in this project with me are just people who are trying to either share hope with somebody else or are trying to grow as people of hope themselves. So that was my story. I grew up in a really abusive situation at home, and through that kind of had a lot of stuff that started spiraling down in life. And everybody's got their own story. Sometimes it's cancer. Sometimes it's a bad breakup. Sometimes it's something that happened when you were a kid. You never can tell. Some of it's stuff we've done to ourselves. Sometimes it's somebody else did it to us. But whatever it is, there's hard days that come in life, and there's really good days that come in life. And I'm trying to figure out how to not minimize the hard days, because I'm not sure we can do that. But I think we have a lot of choice over the outcome and kind of what we decide to do with it.
Yep.
And it's easy for me to say that right now because, it's right here, right now, and I'm talking to somebody who's in Honolulu. But but really, it's not the easiest thing to do when it's late at night and it's been a hard day and you're just trying to decide if you want to keep going. Some of us have those days. I don't think a lot of us do. So
you used the word that so I was thinking about the questions that you're going to ask, and I thought, how do I define hope? And you use the word choice. And so actually kind of was thinking about how I defined hope, and it was choices for me is the center of it, because you can't stop the hard days. It's how you respond to them that actually makes the difference of whether or not you're hopeful or despair.
You're right. So that leads us to questions that I want to ask you. But first, tell us who you are besides somebody who has just this amazing. So if you're listening to this on podcast, you need to also track this down on our website. You can find the same video of this thing on YouTube and a link at isharehope.com. So you got to see, before she closed her windows, you got to see the view because it's amazing. How many floors up are you in your office?
I'm only we're only 9 floors up,
Okay.
but we just happen to be in this beautiful position, and we can see what's in Hawaiian the word Malka, which means towards the mountains, and Makai, which means towards the ocean. So we have almost a kind of 300-degree view from the office, and we even have a learning garden outside so that we can go and pick vegetables and stuff to give us a bit of a relief in the middle of a busy day.
Unbelievable. That's so great. That's really great.
Just
All right.
hopeful for this kind of environment.
All right. So do you may call you Nicole or Nikki?
Oh, Nikki's good.
All right. So Nikki, tell us about you, what you're doing, where you've come from. This bio of yours is really impressive. And I want to make sure that I don't mess it up because you're going to do a better job than I am. So right now, you're the Chief Executive Officer and President of PREL,
Yeah.
which stands for Pacific Resources for Education and Learning. So what do you really do?
That's an excellent question. So Pacific Resources for Education and Learning, or PREL as we're known by just about everybody that we deal with, is a nonprofit organization that started out as a technical assistance agency for education departments by the US government with a grant about 25 years ago. And for 20 or so years, we provided a lot of technical assistance to chief education officers about curriculum development and assessment and kind of those really structural pieces of the education picture. How a school district would tell its teachers to teach, for example. But about 5 years ago, what we were hearing from the communities that we work with, which is not just here in Honolulu and the Hawaiian Islands, but the affiliated islands of the Pacific that have some relationship with the US government. So that includes Palau in the furthest most west, across to the Federated States of Micronesia, into the Marshall Islands, to Guam and the Commonwealth of the Northern Marianas, and down to American Samoa. So we have a huge area of service, about 2 million people in total, about 4,000 islands. So we don't get to all of them all of the time. We've only got a staff of 30, but the model that we use is co-creation. So we really enhance communities' well-being by the community enhancing and embracing their own assets. So I was thinking about, what is it that we do to share hope in our organization, and our commitment to hope is to the students of the Pacific. We want to help them live strong and healthy lives in their own languages and cultures while also being successful global citizens. So sometimes in the development world, people want cultures to stay the same and static, to hold on to their authenticity. And the approach that we take is that cultures grow and shift and change, but when they thrive, they can take that growth and use it towards their own means of success. And that might include taking on aspects of knowledge from other places, like Western science, for example. So that what we really do is use transformative learning strategies that bring in both local or indigenous knowledge and Western knowledge through a lens of place.
I think that's really incredible, because so much of the educational processes that we see are just our way or the highway. We've got it figured out, and you need to just change everything. You need to quit being who you are and be this. And that is so not the way anybody really wants it to play out,
No, and it's not effective. So we see in the US affiliated Pacific Islands that at the turn of the end of the Second World War, there was changes in the way that the governments related to these islands, and it was be like us. But that hasn't led to particularly successful outcomes for the islands, and the islands are saying, we want to be us, but we want to take the good bits of you as well.
Right.
So that's the work that we do. And in particular, what we're looking at, around doing is building self-sustainability and cultural resiliency. And we do that work both inside and outside the classroom, because we recognize that community assets aren't just with teachers inside classrooms, that they're held with elders and parents, as well as the students themselves. And if you can harness all of those assets and help communities be more productive, that they'll find what their success looks like for themselves. And we just basically, the work that we do is act as a facilitator to bring people together and start the conversations. And then we provide a little bit of guidance along the way, but it's the communities themselves that are doing the work, which is why it's so effective.
I love that. I really do. So I'm going to get to more about you personally in a minute on question 3. Oh boy, aren't you scared? But
I love talking about my work.
yeah, work is easy.
Yeah.
So what we're doing with this project, as you know, we're interviewing 1,000 people from around the globe. And what that works out to is about every 8 million people gets one representative. So you better represent your 8 million well. All of those 8 million people who moved from Australia to Hawaii, right?
Yeah.
So what we want to do is ask you these questions, the 5 questions, and get your perspective on hope and how it's shaping you and how it's shaping the world that you're involved in. Because you're in a unique spot, not just as a Australian Hawaiian, but because you're working in education, you have your own story, your own life, your own personality, your own family of origin, your own choices tomorrow. And I want to make sure that in your spot of the world, that people who relate to that really understand how you're doing the hope thing in that space. Because for all of us listening to you and watching this video, it's really important that we know how to change our lives, and we can keep who we are, like you said, and yet take the good bits of what you have to offer that seem to fit in our puzzle and plug them in the right spots, you know? So let's do this. So question 1, what is your definition or your favorite quote or your belief about hope?
Thanks, Chris. I mentioned as we were just getting warmed up that hope for me is about a choice. And that choice is about every day remembering to embrace my assets, or the assets of where I am, to build my own resiliency and the resiliencies of those that I get to touch. And when I say assets, I'm not referring to money or possessions, because I'm talking about assets that come from inside of us, because they're things that we carry with us everywhere, all of the time. And what those assets are the differences between us. They're actually assets. So the different ways that we think, the different ways that we know, the different ways that we are or be. And when we draw upon those internal assets, we can use them to overcome challenges. You asked about quotes. So I have this great quote. Well, there is a great quote by Mahatma Gandhi, and his quote is often having said, "Be the change you want to see in the world." But the actual quote itself is a little bit different to that, and it's I think it's more complex and it's more rich. So if we have the time, I wanted to actually share the quote with you.
I read this recently, and I realized how little we know about that quote, and I would love for you to read it and explain it, because it's really powerful. It's way bigger than we think.
Yeah, I thought so too. So Gandhi said, "We but mirror the world. All the tendencies present in the outer world are to be found in the world of our body. If we could change ourselves, the tendencies in the world would also change. As a man changes his own nature, so does the attitude of the world change towards him. This is the divine mystery supreme. A wonderful thing it is, and the source of our happiness. We need not wait to see what others do." So when you take the context of the quote in the kind of fuller sense, it can mean many things to many people. So where I have internalized this quote, I come to believe that when we see and embrace the hidden assets that we possess within us, that we can see in the world a reflection of what is possible rather than what is impossible. And for me, that is kind of the definition of hope.
That's a great definition of hope. Wow, great quotes too. So with that in mind, question 2 is a nice place to go there. What are you, or not what are you doing, but what has happened in your life? Who's been a giver of that kind of hope? Who's really reinforced that for you?
For the past 2 decades, I've been really fortunate to work with Indigenous communities at home in Australia, but also Indigenous island communities across the Pacific. And these communities have taught me so much about hope and resiliency, and about how there's a choice to be made every day. That choice is to look and see something that's positive, something that's working, something that's possible by harnessing those assets that you have within yourself and within your place, within your community. And rather than look at who you are and who your community is seen as through a lens of deficits, which is defined by others, seeing what you have and the strength and the resiliency and the hope that you have. And that work that I've been able to do alongside with those communities really has influenced the way I look at the world and the way I approach the work of this organization as well. I think there's so much hope in these communities and being a member of an Indigenous Australian community, I know that in Australian media in particular, the hope and the assets are not conveyed very well outside of the community, so that if someone asked you to characterize a particular Indigenous community in Australia, they weren't from that community, they would probably be quite negative about what's happening there, because what you see on the outside is only the deficits, what's wrong, what's not working, what are the problems. When you come from inside a community or you place yourself within a community, you see what's working, you see what's right, you see where the assets are, as well as identifying the challenges. But the hope that lives in those communities, the hope that the elders have for their children to know both the ways of the old ways, the ways of the ancestors, but also hope that they're successful in the world. You know, elders don't necessarily want children not to grow and change in a global world. Likewise, children that I've met want to know when they get to a certain age. Sometimes when they're younger, they're not as interested to start with, but you know, when they become curious about the ways of the traditions, how to use those in everyday life in the modern context that they're living in. And so being able to harness that local wisdom to create generations of living well is a place of hope that gets transmitted when you deal with these communities up close and personal, but sometimes that doesn't get shouted out from the mountaintops, which is one of the things that I do in the work that I get to do with these communities, is tell the stories of success, and that engenders more hope.
You're right. It does. Hope feeds on hope. It really does. And it gets bigger and bigger. I love that. So here you are, Nicole Forrester, is CEO of this organization. You have a 9th floor office that looks out in one of the most beautiful places on the planet. And you've got it going for you. But has there ever been a time back there where you've had to reach back and use the hope we're talking about for yourself? Because it's easy to say, yeah, I bring hope to this person and that person. But for most of us listening, for me, many days, I'm not saying, well, how can I bring hope to somebody else? I'm just thinking, man, this is crazy. I got to get my brain back in gear. So have you had to overcome anything like that? Or has it just always been peaches and cream for you?
No. I don't know that it has been for anyone, really. Everyone has their own struggles, and keeping that perspective, I think, is really important. How I choose hope every day is a really conscious way of seeing challenges or missteps or errors or mistakes or problems, just things that I'm up against a wall, as an opportunity, and an opportunity to learn and hope that whatever is happening in this place and this time is going to make me stronger, smarter, better human, and that I'll come out on the other side of it with something that I can utilize. Because when you're neck deep in quicksand, to use an analogy about challenges that I really enjoy, that's the time when you should be having the most amount of fun. And I am borrowing a quote from someone there, because you get to use all of the resources, all of the assets that you have inside of you or around you to try and dig yourself out. So that's how I choose.
What's happened in your life where you've had to do that? Can you tell us a story? Tell us some real life. Is there anything that you don't have to share? I know there's a lot of people listening to you. We're just asking you to share your life secrets to people you never met before all over the world. There's nothing wrong with that.
I can share a life or death one
Yeah.
that I haven't actually shared very widely because it was so quick that I didn't realize the magnitude of it when it was happening. So I used to be a scuba diver, and I used to put myself in interesting places around the world to go scuba diving. But I was basically in my own backyard in Brisbane, Australia, in Moreton Bay. And there's an artificial reef off of Moreton Island, which has been created by old wrecks that have been sunk there on purpose to create a recreational diving spot. And so I was on a boat overnight on a weekend and decided to go for a dive with a friend and his very novice diver girlfriend. And we got caught under one of the wrecks as the tide was going out. The sand shifted under the wreck, and so there was a gap created. The water was rushing, so it wasn't particularly deep, mainly maybe 10 meters or so, but still deep enough that we were stuck under a wreck trying to swim against a tide. And for several minutes we tried to swim against the tide, and it didn't work, and we can't talk to each other. We've got no way to communicate other than hand signals, and it's pitch dark other than the lights that we have with us. And at the time, the magnitude of the situation didn't hit me until later. But that was probably the closest that I've come to death. But instead of giving into fear and despair, where there was no way that we were going to beat the rush of water under this wreck, it was simply impossible to swim through it. Something in my inside said, you can climb up the side of the wreck. But to do so, I didn't have any gloves on, and the wreck is full of barnacles and jagged edges of metal. But I just kind of indicated to my friend, like, let's go up. And he's kind of looking at me going, what are you talking about? You know, you're going to cut yourself to shreds. But we did. And after several minutes of very slow tactical movements up the side of this boat, we got to a surface and we were able to move out of the way of the tide. What that experience has taught me is that don't panic. You have the resources within you to solve this problem. Just breathe, take in the situation, and choose to be hopeful rather than fear and despair. And it does come back to that choice. It would have ended up a very different situation if we hadn't have not panicked and kept that thinking of how do we solve the puzzle. And I think I have to, at this point, give credit to my parents, because they instilled in me this resiliency from a very young age without me knowing about it, creating a mindset to be hopeful rather than fearful for what was possible. And in that moment, looking back on it, I never felt afraid, which is crazy, because like that, I could have been dead in that diving moment. I just felt calm.
Yeah, that's a great illustration of how and when to not panic. And, you know, if it's not an immediate, urgent situation like that, sometimes those kind of dangerous situations sneak up on us, like a cancer diagnosis, for instance. It's a great sneak up kind of thing. But still, there's days when you just keep bumping against that, you know, an illness or a relationship that's falling apart or whatever it may be. But moment by moment, we have to often choose, don't panic, take a deep breath, and look around for options. And there are always options besides panicking and making more bad choices that can hurt us even more. I know I'm guilty of that sometimes in my own life, my own head, you know, spiraling out of control, and I just want to make more bad choices, but it never helps. It really never helps. So great, well said. So question 4, you may have answered this already. How are you sharing hope with others today? Obviously, you're doing a phenomenal job with your profession. But how are you sharing hope in any other ways today that you want to mention? Again, you may have already answered the question.
I think I'd like to kind of go back to the professional stuff because
Mm-hmm.
it's the bit that makes me hopeful,
Yeah.
and to have fun with the work.
On that note, I think it's really cool that you're in a profession that actually drives that passion. And that's a really cool thing that you've been able to accomplish. And congratulations on that. I know more people want to do that, and you're a great example of how to get there. So I'm glad that you get to actually get paid and show up at work and get to say, this is what I want to do. I'm bringing hope to people, even in a greater way. So keep going.
Thank you. I feel really fortunate to be able to do this work, and it was a very long journey to get here, and the path was never clear, and I didn't actually know what this would look like. There was no grand plan. There was no strategic moves. There were opportunities and missteps, and going down the wrong path for a while, and then kind of having to backtrack. But in the long run, I think that being hopeful and living hopeful, that another opportunity will come up that will give me even more professional opportunity to share that idea that together, collective impact, we can have a bigger positive impact than we can as individuals. And so that kind of underpins the work that we do, and in particular, the area of climate change is something that I'm very passionate about, and I feel really fortunate that this organisation has prioritised eco-literacy, or environmental knowledge, to live more sustainably as one of our key priorities. And we have some really cool projects that I wanted to share just about hope and how they relate to hope in what might seem to most people as kind of completely hopeless, because communities have no control about the determinants of climate change, especially small Pacific islands that don't have any carbon or very low carbon emissions. So also right now, the islands are facing the El Nino drought, and there's a real need that's been identified for better knowledge and innovation around sustainable water use. So one of the really hopeful projects that we have that I love to talk about is called Water for Life. I mean, what a hopeful name that is.
Absolutely.
It provides informal science education to communities. So not just students and teachers and schools, but we actually take the learning out into the communities, and we bring all of the community members in a place together to work on projects to help improve their own water source. So what the underpinning rationale is, we improve science knowledge by actually helping people create their own safe drinking water resources, and then sustain them into the future by helping them understand how to look after them and manage them and make sure that they continue to be safe. And that could be something like looking at an existing water catchment area and testing it, and then explaining the science behind why this water is clear but it's not clean, for example. And just those basic scientific things that we know will help reduce students' waterborne illnesses, which helps increase attendance at school, which helps increase learning. So there's all these great flow-on effects of this one project around clean water use that we get to do.
That's a really cool example, and I don't think people realize that in world health, water issues, food issues, even war and migrant issues, there's so many things that we think, where's the fix now? So we gotta stop carbon emissions now, or we gotta change the way dietary plans are put into schools or into third world situations. But it really comes to, that's helpful now. It really is. You have to get now taken care of. But that education cycle that has to literally take decades and generations to bring to fruition a true change, a systemic change. And I think that's what you're doing. You're really getting at the core of this thing. Because a new water pump or a well or filtration system is really cool, and it's needed today. But so much of what we don't understand, even in America, we don't understand why our water quality is good. Americans don't have a clue. I don't know. I just turn on the tap. But if I knew, I'd be able to educate my children and those around me, and then in a greater way support the world's learning of that. I think that's awesome. Well done.
Thank you.
Actually, we interviewed someone named Lynn Doe a few months ago, and she is in Australia, but she's working with the island populations, the ones that are actually flooding right now, the ones who are losing ground at a pretty rapid pace. Fascinating conversation. You got to look that one up. And if you're listening or watching this, listeners, y'all should check back because it's a great tie-in to this conversation.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right about that. It's intergenerational, which is one of the reasons that we love the work that we do, is because we get to get out of the classrooms and into the community. So the elders are sitting side by side their grandchildren, learning and then sharing their own knowledge about their place and about the assets that they have and how to harness them. So it's really cool.
Very nice. Okay, question 5. You got to help us with this. So we're listening to you express all this hope. What do we do when we quit listening or quit watching the video, put the headphones down? What do we do next? What are the simple ABC steps to start learning about hope for ourselves or sharing it with somebody else?
I don't know if there's any ABC steps.
Oh, come on. I'm looking for the book title. What is it? At the back cover, what's it going to say?
Choose hope every day.
That's a great one. That's a really great one. How practical is that?
Yeah, it's a bit cliche, but I think making choosing hope a part of your daily practice changes your outlook on the world. It really is about shifting your mindset to be glass half full. And I think the part of that's really exciting is the growing and the sharing of hope. So one part is how you internalize this. But with the interconnected world that we live in today, you can grow and share hope at the touch of a button. But where does it all start? It starts with that human connection. So I think growing or sharing hope once you have your internalized hope, can be amplified. That internal hope can be amplified by sharing or growing in others. Something as simple as smiling at a stranger on the street, especially in urbanized Western capitals. People don't smile at each other anymore.
I know, right?
I know. So I go to the islands, everyone's smiling at me all the time and I'm smiling back. But when I come back even to Honolulu and walk down the street, people don't look at each other anymore. So one of my ABCs is random smiles.
That'll freak people out.
Because everyone's like, what's she doing?
Yeah. Is there something on me? What's funny? I love it.
And then you've got, I'm really fortunate that I also live at the other end of the spectrum, that I get to incorporate hope into my life's work on a daily basis. But I really see this as a spectrum of hopefulness. It could be something as simple as a smile. It could be dedicating your life to some kind of work that promotes hope. And there's a place for everybody on the spectrum. So that's why maybe there's no ABC, because you've got to find where you sit and what you're comfortable with, and then where you can share and grow. To help me be more mindful and present, I try and pay closer attention to what's happening around me. So not just to me and my space, but to those who share it with me. And that really, it's just a glimpse that you need. You don't need a huge amount of hope. It's just that little glimmer that then can be amplified. I'd put a plug in for Prel and say, the work that we do, it gives me hope.
Yeah, I bet it does. I think all those steps and points are perfect. Tell us where we can find you. Social media, Prel, obviously. Give us websites for you or the organization.
Thank you. So we're really easy to find, prel.org, prel.org. We're also on Facebook, and you can contact me, and your listeners can contact me at forrester@prel.org. So get in contact. I'd love to hear from everybody.
Great. Nicole Forrester, you're so cool. So cool. I love your Australian accent too, but all Americans love Australian accents, so,
Guys, in Australia, we love the American accent. So
I find that hard to believe.
It's true.
Well, good. How should we move to Australia then? It'd be so much cooler in Australia, right?
That's right. I live my life as an expatriate for a reason.
So do this for me before you leave. Tell me your name and I Share Hope. So we get each guest to say, so you'd say, I'm Nicole Forrester and I Share Hope. And we'll use that at the beginning of this episode on the podcast version. It's kind of a neat way to introduce the guests and make sure we have them all lined up the right way. So I'm going to turn my microphone off and you can say that.
I'm Nicole Forrester and I Share Hope.
Awesome. That's great. So you can find, if you're listening to this along with me or watching this along with me on YouTube, you can find this at isharehope.com. So a lot of us are listening to the podcast while we're in the grocery or while we're out for a run or whatever. isharehope.com. You can find Nicole Forrester in the interviews tab. And then we'll have the links to her website in case you weren't able to write them down. You know, the link to this video, pictures, everything we can do to point you back to Nicole Forrester will be right there, and along with the Perel organization and a view of downtown Honolulu.
Thank you so much, Chris, for this opportunity to share some thoughts. I'm honored that you asked me to join, and congratulations on such a wonderful project.
I really appreciate your time, Nikki. I really do. You've been a valuable add to this list of 1,000 people sharing hope. So have a great day. Enjoy the ocean. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks.
All right,
Take care. Bye.
You've just listened to I Share Hope. If you're ready to make a change, head to our website at isharehope.com and claim your free copy of the top 10 actions of hope from world leaders to use hope in your own life. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.
Happy and well informed.
Oh, well, I'm very happy, and I'm really honored that, you asked me to participate, and I'm so glad that our schedules finally aligned.
Me too.
How did you get started with this project? And it's just blossomed. It's massive.
Well, I don't know if it's massive, but it's helping me and a few other people. I think my wife listens to it. That's two of us. And I think there's a few more than that out there somewhere. So what we're doing is really trying to build hope in our lives. So myself and the people who are listening along and sharing in this project with me are just people who are trying to either share hope with somebody else or are trying to grow as people of hope themselves. So that was amazing.
Hawaii.
I was expecting Australia. I thought, are you in downtown Sydney? Where is that? No kidding.
Yeah. Sorry, I should probably update that Skype thing.
Honolulu, that's not, I kind of want to end the conversation right here because you're not bringing any hope to me.
No, I'm here to share the hope.
Yeah.
I'm so curious. I want to ask you questions.
I'm sure we'll get there. You can ask all you want. I think the one thing I want is a ticket. I want to have this interview in person. I think having it there in Honolulu would probably be much more effective.
I think so too.
So what in the world, well, I got a million questions too.
Yeah.
So we can do all of this in the interview. What questions do you have for me? Because I want to make sure you are just...
We but mirror the world. All the tendencies present in the outer world are to be found in the world of our body. If we could change ourselves, the tendencies in the world would also change. As a man changes his own nature, so does the attitude of the world change towards him. This is the divine mystery supreme. A wonderful thing it is, and the source of our happiness. We need not wait to see what others do. I'm Nicole Forrester, and I Share Hope.
Welcome to I Share Hope, the podcast where world leaders share their real stories of hope and how you can use actionable hope.
My story, I grew up in a really abusive situation at home, and through that kind of had a lot of stuff that started spiraling down in life. And everybody's got their own story. Sometimes it's cancer. Sometimes it's a bad breakup. Sometimes it's something that happened when you were a kid. You never can tell. Some of it's stuff we've done to ourselves. Sometimes it's somebody else did it to us. But whatever it is, there's hard days that come in life, and there's really good days that come in life. And I'm trying to figure out how to not minimize the hard days, because I'm not sure we can do that. But I think we have a lot of choice over the outcome and kind of what we decide to do with it.
Yep.
And start changing your life today. And now, here's your host, Chris Williams.
Okay, can you see me? Is it too dark?
It's just a little dark, I think, because the bright light's behind you. Can you tilt the shades a little bit? There's an elevator going down behind you.
Yeah. Can you see the ocean?
No. I can't. Is it between the buildings?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. What a view. Is this your house or your office?
This is my office.
Unbelievable.
This is where I can work 80 hours a week.
Yeah, no kidding. That's really amazing. So where are you at right now?
In Honolulu.
Honolulu?
Yeah. So the Australian expatriate gets to live in